Hey, friends. I hope everybody's doing well. Um, some of you may have noticed that from time to time I post these articles that I've written called A Word for Africa. And what I would traditionally do is I'd pick a word and then I would share an inspirational message based on that word, right? I am going to continue to do that, but what I would also like to start doing, and I guess this video is would be the inaugural expression of that, is to do videos where I express some of these thoughts that I'm having. What I've been thinking about over the past few days is Afrophobia, and I am completely convinced. So, incidentally, Afrophobia would then be, a word for Africa for this week, I guess, or until the next time I do one of these posts, whether it's an article or a video. But Afrophobia has been a thought that's been ringing in my mind this past week, probably a little over a week. And the reason for that is because I am completely convinced that as a people, as South Africans, we are incredibly and shamefully Afrophobic. I say this because of some of the things that you hear, and that we've been hearing on social media that a lot of South Africans say about other Africans, particularly other Africans who reside in South Africa. There is also, what you hear if you are speaking or having a conversation with an average South African. And in this context, I'm speaking particularly about black South Africans. If you're having a conversation with, a black South African, a lot of times there will be statements that are made and things that are said that are very expressive of the xenophobia, or rather the Afrophobia, that seems to, be so resident within most of us. And I think for a lot of us black South Africans, we know that, for those of us who grew up in the townships and in the inner city, whichever city it may have been in South Africa. For me, it was the Johannesburg inner city. So I grew up in Hillbrow, Berea, Yeovil. That was the space wherein I grew up. Arrived there when my mother moved to Johannesburg. I was 12 years old. So I practically, had a significant part of my formative years spent in that space. And because at the time that I grew up, already the inner city of Johannesburg was already full of a number of different nationalities from all over Africa. I guess as part of the response to the democratic project, or the transition from the previous government into our first democratic government. It suddenly freed the borders up for Africans to begin to travel into the country, which wasn't surprising because South Africa in many ways had a lot more to offer from a development point of view in the continent than many of our other African countries. And so, we had an influx of a lot of our brothers and sisters coming through. And I think in a sense, I appreciate the fact that I got to grow up in an environment like that, because it sort of positioned my thinking and my mentality very early on, into becoming a Pan-Africanist. Because I went to school with people from all over the continent, literally. But the average South African that you speak to, for the most part, and those of you, as I said, who grew up either in a city center or in our townships, would know that there have always been a lot of sort of derogatory and negative sentiments expressed about Africans who come from outside of South Africa. That's where the likes of the terms like amakwerekwere, amakirimani, and all of those things, came from. In fact, as I say it, I remember I'm reminded of Ndadehu Masekela's song. I think it was it wasn't Tanai. Was it Tanai? No, it wasn't Tanai. But there's one in one of his very famous songs. There's a part where he says, "Ageni biza bantu kirimani nabonga bantu," basically saying, stop calling other Africans by these funny names. They're also people. But the point I'm trying to make is that this, I hate to call it a culture, but it seems to have developed into a culture of Afrophobia has existed for a very long time in this country. And if you look around and have conversations with South Africans today, it continues to permeate our society. It continues to really have unfettered expression almost in our daily discourse in different spaces. And this is why some politicians have also then made the decision to leverage, the sentiment, the likes of your Gayton Mackenzie, who then coined the expression abahambe, referring to the fact that Africans who are from outside South Africa who are here should leave. And part of the narrative, and this is what I'm trying to drive to today, part of the narrative is that they need to leave because they're taking our jobs. They need to leave because they're committing a lot of crimes in the country. They need to leave because this, that, and the other, right? But the reasons that are stated are reasons, when you actually look at it, are reasons that are not. There are more excuses than there are reasons, because the same reasons that South Africans are citing for wanting, Africans who are from outside South Africa to leave are actually issues that we are grappling with ourselves as South Africans, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. But the first thing is that this whole idea that are they taking our jobs? Which jobs are they really taking? And maybe I'm somehow ignorant, but the South Africa that I know, and in my analysis of this country, the jobs that a lot of these foreign nationals are taking are either, number one, jobs that South Africans don't want to take anyway, and that's the truth. When you look at the fact that we talk about how there are a lot of, if you look at Johannesburg, for example, a lot of Zimbabweans in the restaurant industry. All the waiters and waitresses are Zimbabweans, the restaurant managers are Zimbabweans, blah, blah, blah. But most South Africans that I know, at least, that I've been exposed to, and some of you might bear me witness, and please feel free to disagree if you do, but a lot of South Africans don't care for those jobs. A lot of South Africans don't care for menial jobs. A lot of South Africans, don't care for jobs where they have to be a gardener or a helper. If they take that job, you would very few times would you have a pleasant experience with your own countrymen. If you give them an opportunity with one of those jobs. That's the truth, because the truth of the matter, and this is a fact that any of us who are South Africans and are honest would admit, is that for the most part, South Africans are incredibly entitled. And I don't know, I think maybe part of it comes from the legacy of apartheid, because South Africans feel that they have been sidelined and marginalized for so long, and mistreated for so long that, they now deserve for the world to give them back something. I'm trying to rationalize it psychologically, even though I wouldn't necessarily agree with it. But that's the truth. So nobody, at a fundamental level, nobody's taking those jobs. And the reason why so many foreign nationals were able to come in and take those jobs is because there was a gap in the market. We can have another separate conversation altogether about the abuse of the market in as far as cheap labor is concerned, where foreign nationals are concerned, particularly where you consider the fact that a large proportion of them would be illegal foreigners, right? We can have a conversation about that, and that conversation has its own merits. But the truth of the matter and the fact is, South Africans at a fundamental level are not really interested in those jobs. That's one. Two, the jobs, the other part around this job conversation is the fact that it's almost like as we would say, there are levels to this thing, right? There's a level where, there are menial jobs that are there, and South Africans don't want them. But there are also jobs, more advanced job opportunities, excuse me, that a lot of South Africans are not skilled enough for, right? And so they become unemployable in those spaces because they, lack the necessary training, the necessary qualifications, etc. So you have then those jobs, many of which actually, if we are to be honest, are specialized, being taken over by foreign nationals who live in the country. And I mean, we can give a lot of examples. That's why we have so many foreign nationals who are university lecturers in this country. That's why we have so many foreign nationals who are working in science in this country, in medical science, in anthropology, in a number of different spheres. And they're working in spaces where many South Africans are not qualified and not skilled for, right? So that's just to, in my view, that's just to try to debunk the myth around foreign nationals coming into the country to take our jobs. There's a conversation to be had about why, if that is true, that foreign nationals are coming in and taking our jobs, there must be a serious conversation had around why that would be even possible. And I'm not talking about a conversation where we're trying to shift the blame, right, about those who are maybe abusing the influx of foreign nationals to sort of abuse the market for cheap labor and that sort of thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about us as a people taking responsibility for where we are. Right? So as South Africans, why is it possible for anybody to come into our country and, quote unquote, take our jobs? Right? What are we doing or not doing to place ourselves in that position? Are we doing enough? Are we doing what we need to do to develop ourselves? I understand the socio-economic challenges that we have in this country, right? And the disparities, especially from a race point of view. I understand the things that we have to grapple with in terms of the legacy of apartheid and pulling ourselves up out of the, I guess, trajectory that we have been subjected to for many years, even, since before apartheid. The colonization project as it is has caused a lot of problems for black natives in South Africa and elsewhere in the continent. However, at which point do we decide to take responsibility for our own destinies? Because we can't change what happened. We cannot change what happened in the past, right? But at which point do we take responsibility for our own destiny and our own future? At which point do we say, what will it take for us to lift ourselves up out of this dark place that we have been in for so long, right? So this is part one. I'm going to have to post another video, but part two to this, because this is a very rich conversation, and I think, I need to do my best to try and do it justice. But that's what I've been thinking about. This entire excuse around, jobs and foreign nationals coming in to take our jobs. That's the one part of it, right? The second part of this conversation, before I even go to part two, really, so I'm going to end this video shortly, and this will be part one, and then I'll start part two to continue the conversation. But within this first part, another aspect that I wanted to also discuss, no, excuse me, apart from, the job conversation, is to also speak about the crime. This idea that foreigners who are in South Africa are responsible for the crime rate in this country. You hear it, all you have to do, take a walk down, any community in any of our townships in South Africa, and you'll hear it, even among South Africans in urban areas, to a certain extent, that sentiment exists. It's a lie. It's a lie. The problem, the crime problem, is not a foreign national problem. The crime problem in this country is like the crime problem anywhere else in the world. You know what it is? It's a crime problem. That's what it is. It's a crime problem. We don't have a foreign national crime problem in this country. Now, I want you to hear me, right? I'm under no illusions, and it's not lost on me that there are a lot of foreign nationals in this country who are committing a lot of crimes, some of them very heinous crimes, right? From human trafficking to drug pushing, to even murder, right? There are a lot of crimes that are being committed, fraud, a lot of crimes that are being committed by a lot of foreign nationals in this country. No disputes there. But if you look at the same crimes that those foreign nationals are committing in South Africa, you would find a lot more South Africans committing those very same crimes. By the way, not just in South Africa, but in other countries in the world. There are South Africans who are committing crimes in other countries. There are South Africans who are serving jail sentences in other countries. What do we say about that? The point I'm trying to make is that the crime problem is a criminal problem. We don't have a problem with foreign nationals. What we have a problem with are criminals. And a criminal is a criminal is a criminal anywhere in the world. People will say, some of them, they wouldn't commit any of these crimes in their home country. I'm not sure that's true, because a criminal is a criminal is a criminal. But let's assume that it was true, maybe to a certain extent. I guess what we're dealing with here would be a consequence of democracy. It's one of the consequences of democracy, right? The freer a society becomes, the more negative advantage certain groups of people would want to take. The more negative advantage certain groups of people would want to take. So it's a crime problem, guys. It's a criminal problem, not a foreign national problem. I completely disagree that we would now be, if we want to talk about the struggles around immigration and illegal immigration and border control, to ensure that, people who move in and out of the country do so lawfully, that's another conversation to have. But let's not find cheap excuses to complex problems. I think it would be remiss of us to try to seek to do that. Yeah. I'm going to share another part. I have a lot actually on my mind about this topic. I'll probably do a part 2, or maybe 2 and 3, depending. Sometimes I get long-winded because I sometimes belabor the point. But anyway, that is just a thought I wanted to share with you around Afrophobia. Open up a conversation, a word for Africa. Have a great day.